music. Welcome to another episode of Bars Ankle High.
Episode 4, you made it!
4 whole episodes of listening to us laugh at ourselves.
Yeah, I've had a great time. I
5
hope
stars.
that you guys too. Yeah, definitely, whatever you think, leave us a 5-star review.
And when we say whatever you think, only nice things, only the most positive of reinforcement at all times. I'm too much of a tenderoni for constructive criticism. No, I'm kidding. I mean, some constructive criticism, sure. Generally, just be nice to me at all times.
Listen, Garrett's a Cancer, and
Yes.
so she's like a tortellini.
I can't wait. Can't wait to hear this. What am I filled with?
Knives. But you don't know that until you get inside. So you don't want to end up inside of the tortellini by breaking it open with being mean. Because then you get knives.
It's just a little dough bag full of knives. That's
also my body type.
gross description. Ah, boy. Well, today we are talking about emotional dysregulation, which is also described as moodiness, being frustrated, short-tempered. I thought a good way that it was described was just being overwhelmed or flooded with emotions. I thought it was a good way to describe it. So this is a hard one for me in particular. This is probably the symptom of ADHD that I'm the most self-conscious about. After the fact. Never in the moment. Definitely after the fact. And I'm sure if you know me personally in any capacity, we have probably had one of these interactions. Something I am definitely more aware of now, and I'm working on it. So, sorry if I was a little much. Chad.org, which we mention a lot in this.
Chad with
ADHD.
2 Ds.
Oh, yeah.
Not Chad like a frat boy.
I feel like it's probably porn.
Chad with 2 Ds is the name of a porno. But
Quick-
chadwith2ds.org is a not-for-profit.
Great ADHD resource.
Yes.
When I was in 2nd grade, so in the very early days of the internet, we heard about this pet adoption thing or something at school, and they gave a website, and I thought it was frisky.com. So I went home and I was like, hey, can we pull up this website that I heard about at school with these pets? And was immediately met with, no, that's not the website. And that was the only explanation I got.
Were your parents like, we already have that bookmark? No.
That's not for cats. No.
My mom needed a bike rack for her car before we went to the Cape one year. And I guess was going to go to Dick's to get it, but for whatever reason decided to use the internet.
Mm-hmm. And was like, I need Dick's. Take me to Dicks.com.
No, she typed in Dicks.com and got, effectively, Lemon Party.
Oh. Fun. Surprise.
Panicked.
Yeah.
Which I would imagine lends itself to her hesitation with using computers to this day.
Oh, that was her little T that is keeping her away from computers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that this happened in 2000, maybe.
Well, it's been a long time.
It's been quite a while. But yeah, Dicks.com, and she panicked, freaked out, and then just had to go to the store in person.
Yeah.
And then explained why she was there in person.
Oh, good. So she relived it with all of these
Dicks.com.
strangers. Oh, good. But yes, Chad.org, Chad with 2 Ds. There was an article about this emotional dysregulation as kind of, I guess, the way it's summarized in most places. And there was a recent study that was done. I'm going to give we'll have the link in the episode notes to this article. I just have a snippet in here. I don't have who did this study. But our recent study was about 1,500 people involved, and up to 73% of the participants displayed emotional dysregulation as a symptom of ADHD. So it's very common. ADHD impairs the ability to regulate emotion. So it causes these overblown responses to like small setbacks, problems, and then after that response, trouble like refocusing or settling or like bringing yourself back down from that, but then also being a little bit insensitive and unaware of other people. I personally have been described as intense by a lot of people throughout my life. And I think some of it is this. I mean, some of it is just my personality, but I think some of it is also this emotional dysregulation. So I don't want any neurologists adding me after this explanation, but this is my explain to me like I'm 5 version of what happens as far as the brain goes. So there's what's causing these intense emotions. There's poor communication between the amygdala and the cerebral cortex. So the amygdala being what is handling like fight or flight. So like those intense, off the cuff, quick decisions, anxiety, fear, sadness, things like that, like the big ones. The cerebral cortex being the part that kind of slows that emotional response and kind of gets the body to take a second.
Is cerebral about it.
And is cerebral about it and wants to like gauge an appropriate response to this stimuli. And that poor communication is what's causing this, like, where it's almost like you're bypassing the cerebral cortex because you're just off the cuff reacting.
Did they posit in this study that it's because the cerebral cortex is smaller?
I did not read that. But it is something to check out. I did, instead of falling down that rabbit hole, I fell down an autism spectrum disorder rabbit hole, which I have highlighted in a different color in case I was or wasn't going to talk about it, but since we're talking about it. So another study that was done where they did, they were looking at people with autism spectrum disorder with an MRI. They were talking about this when this dysregulation is happening, the people that they were studying that had the lower functioning prefrontal cortex activity, the lesser the function, the more severe the ASD symptoms, the worse the emotional regulation. So the lower functioning they were, the worse emotional regulation. And there is a lot of overlap with, I mean, we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
That there's a lot of overlap and correlation between autism spectrum disorders, which have symptoms like poor focus and restlessness and impulsivity, are very linked to ADHD symptoms, which I thought was like an interesting little, that was my side research that I started doing when I was looking at this.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, I know that we talked about it last week off air, but yeah, I'm at this point with all the research that I've done for my episodes. I'm pretty sure that maybe in the next 10 or 15 years they'll just include ADHD as part of autism spectrum disorder. Because I mean, when I was in school, like Asperger's was a thing, like a totally separate diagnosis, and that's part of ASD now. So I just feel like it's just a matter of time before because it's got to be so much easier for studying purposes because, like, there's so much overlap that it's the kind of thing where, like...
We might as well.
Well, if, like, there's this much overlap with it, like, you can't necessarily explain everything away with, oh, they have comorbid depression or comorbid anxiety or comorbid bipolar or whatever. Like, well, sometimes, like, I don't know, am I just depressed because I keep having these emotional outbursts and nobody wants to be friends with me or whatever?
Fun little anxiety games that we play.
Yes.
Because the anxiety really Makes these symptoms so much more manageable.
You just do what I do and get cats. They don't care if I'm a bitch.
If I'm mean to my dogs for a second, they're like, how could you?
The fact that your dogs have finally accepted me, I feel like, is...
That was nice. Yeah, Katie didn't get
surprising.
screamed at for as long today when she came in.
Although I didn't really think about it. I just went for it, so...
And it worked out. Who knew?
Yeah. Yeah, made your husband real mad, though.
So some of the examples that I was seeing of this emotional dysregulation. Volatile emotional sensitivity, or like impulsivity when it comes to emotions. Like feeling something and immediately acting on it. Problems self-regulating your initial response to something. Being prone to rumination, which I am definitely prone
I do that.
to rumination. I'm excellent at ruminating, personally. Having a hard time self-soothing, which they linked to a poor working memory. So saying that you're dealing with this and your ability to use like visual imagery and self-talk to settle yourself down, because your working memory, which we were talking about before, you have that shorter shelf. You don't have as many things at play that you can keep handy in that working memory. It limits your ability to use those tools to like talk yourself down when you get worked up.
My brain just said, so normal people just talk themselves down when they feel bad? Just throughout the day? Okay.
You know what? I will say...
I just pick that up and take it with me for the rest of the day. Like, okay, we'll handle this later, but I'm going to be mad the whole time.
This is my day now. Can't believe I have to be mad all day. I cannot tell you how shocking researching this was. I was like, what? Man, I've been doing this a long time. And like I said, I know that there's people in my life that have dealt with this. I'm more aware of it now. And it's definitely something I try and like pump the brakes a little bit before. And I'm sure like as I get older, I'll get better with it. But I had a good, 25-year stretch there of just shooting from the hip.
That's my mom.
Yeah.
My mom she's like the queen of knee-jerk reactions. Mm-hmm. And then like the next day will text me her actual thoughts on something.
Yep. I get all the anxious ones out first. First I roast you, and then I can be sweet after.
I just squawk.
Yeah.
And then I settle down.
Have you seen a crow when it has a shiny trinket? Just flapping and head bobbing and yelling. A lot of that.
Yeah, no, I don't do that. I ruminate. Like I will think about something for a really long time, and then make my decision. Mm-hmm. The problem with that is that I'm very quiet while I'm having those thought processes. And then once my decision is made, it is made. You're not going to change my mind.
Yeah, I'm also very good at grudges. I can hold a grudge very well. I think I've really gotten better with that, but I've become much more forgiving, which I think is just like growing up like developing empathy for people.
Which is hard when we were looking at this through the hindsight of like a late diagnosis. It's like, am I just maturing, or is it because I'm now aware of this? Which is part of the problem that I've seen mentioned in a lot of the studies that I read, is that when they can study ADHD in rats really well, but studying it in humans is really challenging because you can't really get like a full placebo in humans, because most people with ADHD are pretty intelligent.
Yeah.
So,
and all the work that you're doing to overcompensate for any of the deficits that you've got from ADHD. Right. I think it's at face value. I think a lot of people think, you really just need to be more organized, and you really just need to be focusing more.
Right.
And you then realize that you've been running like on a faster treadmill this whole time.
Yeah. And that's what I was talking about last week with the disorganization episode, was like, to the extent that like, if I was in that study and they were like, okay, you have to do this list, like I can follow a list for a time, and then I'll stop.
Yep. And then I'll hate the list and I won't do it.
Right. So it's that kind of thing where it's like, well, I can follow the rules. I'm really good at following rules. So if you tell me I have to do something a certain way, I'll do it a certain way. I will follow those rules, which is why I wasn't diagnosed, because they were like, this girl follows rules. Look at that.
Yeah, I'm good
she does
with, like...
exactly what we tell her to do.
I would say I'm at, like, a 75% for following rules. I follow most of them. My problem is when I fundamentally disagree with something and it really does not make sense and I think it's more inefficient and there's no good reason for it, I'm like, I'm not following that rule.
Oh,
I'm not proud of that trait. But...
I Elwoods the shit out of my whole life. Like, you tell me I can't do something, like, fucking watch. Like, well, I will...
Now you're going to have to watch with your eyes pinned open, like in A Clockwork Orange.
Yes, because I am an atomic bomb, and I will force you.
Or I will beat you with a bat in the street. It's one of the two.
Yeah. Like I said, you cut me open, I'm full of knives.
Just a little dough bag full of knives. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. Woohoo!
Like the Pillsbury Doughboy, but when they poke him, there's, like, prongs on the other end of it.
Yeah, it matches the finger with the trying to give him a yeast infection.
Did I miss that in the commercial? Or...
Well, because of the excessive prodding. There's, like, something that goes around the internet every few years, and it's, like, the Doughboy's obituary. He basically dies of a chronic yeast infection from being poked all the time.
Well, that is really gross, and what a visual.
If you know what I'm talking about, listener, please comment on this week's Instagram post to validate me, because I know I'm right.
Yeah, and I'm not going to Google Pillsbury Doughboy yeast infection prodding, so we're just going to have to wait for somebody to find the meme.
I mean, I'll Google it, but I'll wait till I'm at work.
I'm going to wait for the work filters to catch it. So, other things that they did mention is experiencing and displaying emotions more intensely, especially like in interpersonal reactions. And they said it's probably caused by just being completely overwhelmed by that emotion. And I do feel like sometimes I experience something and I feel like it's hitting somebody else and they're getting the light dose and I'm getting the full dose. Like, I'm just getting hit with a Mack truck of sadness or fear or anxiety or anger. There was also a mention that people may focus more on the negative aspects of a task or situation, which I've never done in my life.
Garrett's lying.
I've never, ever done in my life.
The only reason we're pre-recording this is because she made me.
She forced me with her knives.
Focus on all the negative possibilities instead of just doing what I do, where I just assume it'll always work out.
Winging it works great for me. And more likely to express frustration or anger, which I can or cannot confirm. Will not confirm.
I'm much better at being much more upfront with my emotions since, like, 2018. For some reason.
Yeah, I think I'm getting better, probably because I've been ruthlessly called out by my spouse for years at finding a better way, because I have at points been the crowned queen of being passive-aggressive. So I've worked a lot on communicating myself better and kind of getting to the root. Actually, you know what did it was COVID. We were stuck together all the time, and there was no choice but to get along because the alternative was unpleasant. So we kind of would have micro fights. We would start having a fight and then realize, well, there's no leaving, so I guess we better just skip to the good part and just figure out why we're mad and get over it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what you're saying is the only possible solution.
Just lots of fucking. Sorry, Mom.
That is spelled FUCKIN'.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, so I'm reading all of these tendencies and traits and thought to myself, well, I've been attacked. And then I realized I played myself, and the whole point of talking about emotional dysregulation is It's if I was the note for myself is if I have been attacked was a person. So I made a real 360-degree journey with with that. But it really is.
I'm glad that you took me along with you.
Yeah, it was nice, right?
Yeah.
It was good.
I actually saw something on a Reddit forum about, I think, women with ADHD. And somebody was commenting about how there were a lot of posts in the subreddit about people who were with partners who were kind of blaming their ADHD, blaming the OP's ADHD for why their partner was upset. And basically, a lot of the comments were like, that's not your ADHD, your partner's just an asshole, and like, or, you're not needy, your needs just aren't being met, or something
they're
like
just
that.
gaslighting you.
But then somebody else had a different, so based on all of those posts, somebody had a post that I saw today, actually, that said something to the effect of, like, I think that the reason, like, basically they were, like, hypothesizing that folks with ADHD are prone to ending up in abusive or unequal relationships because of that emotional dysregulation. Like, we're so prone to feeling immense love, even.
Yep.
And immense guilt and immense anxiety that the cycle of abuse that abusive people inflict on their partners, particularly love bombing. And because, like, speaking from experience, they don't mind when you're obsessed with them. Like, in the beginning of a relationship,
fuel to the fire.
They love it, yeah. And then,
like, they're fostering that.
Exactly.
Because then you're also questioning fewer things.
As, like, the victim, like, I was being rewarded for being clingy. And, in the past, that had always been like, oh, I've, gotta slow myself down so that I don't overwhelm them or whatever.
Right.
But then, at the same time, that the blow up and then the victim apologizing for their partner's blow up is that intense anxiety and that wanting to make it better and like, oh, I'm sorry, I must have done something wrong. I'll fix it. But, it was just interesting that I think that that's probably kind of accurate.
I think that between that and also I question myself a lot because I am raw dogging mental health. So I'm always having that thought when I feel something intensely, I'm constantly taking a step back now. And I'm sure this again will even out over time and I'll figure things out. For the time being, then stopping and I'm like, okay, am I feeling, is this an anxious thought? Is this a logical thought? Am I a lunatic? And then you go, oh, I am anxious because now I'm thinking if I'm asking if it's an anxious thought, it must be an anxious thought. So that's the fun little ride that I take myself on about 30 times a day. So my anxiety is going great. Thanks for asking. And actually, not that it's funny at all, but there was a lot of mention in looking at emotional dysregulation of comorbidities. So higher rates of substance abuse is sky high, dying by suicide, experiencing depression, and a lot of coexisting mental health issues. Because it seems that emotional dysregulation is a core symptom for a lot of mental health issues. And definitely, I mean, we'll talk about this when we do an episode on anxiety also, but that amygdala response, that fight or flight, like that's anxiety. Yeah. You're living. My amygdala is probably like, when they show.
It's probably fine.
I wonder if that.
I don't know if you guys heard that on the mics, but
that was the ghost that lives outside, I guess. I guess now we have a driveway ghost. It's just somebody talking and sounded like help, but
I don't know.
Gonna
look, we can't help from up here.
Bystander my apathy right out of that.
Listen, your husband's downstairs.
Somebody else will hear it. It'll be fine. We saw a hawk swoop out of a tree and grab something today. That was fucking crazy.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I was like, so yeah, it's obviously this is very linked to anxiety because you are living in that state of like immediate amygdala response, but also I feel like my amygdala is probably like super muscular. Like if a brain structure could be jacked, mine would be like.
Well, and I think that
ripped.
also comes from like people with ADHD are intelligent. Like we know that our reaction is too much. So I think to that extent we do have that anxiety. It's that is where our self-regulation comes in. Like the
Right.
anxiety builds up, that amygdala muscle builds up in order to temper the extreme happiness, extreme anger, extreme whatever, to be like, oh, that was too much, I was over the line, and proceeds to develop our like masking techniques that we use to kind of shield ourselves from being ostracized.
Yeah, I did not know really until we started researching this that this was a symptom of ADHD, and just always kind of wondered like why I seem to feel things so much. And I mean, feels things so intensely, but also not understanding why other people weren't reacting the same way I was to something, being like, are you not entertained? Like, constantly. Like, how can you not find this? Also, I've also been somebody very interested in politics and who's followed politics, and that doesn't help this.
It's not a great time to be
turns out
interested in politics.
No.
Like, I would say maybe the last 8 years.
I
probably.
read a tweet the other day that said, I'm going to find the tweet. Because it's just gonna work better if I find the tweet. Because I almost fell off my chair. Oh, I messaged it. I know where it is. I read a tweet the other day. It's so depressing to me that at one point in my life I thought the U.S. was going to elect its first female president, and now I'm unsure what rights we'll have after the next few elections. And then I did that like thing. So yeah, it's a tough time to exist. Certainly since like 2015-ish, I think it's been a tougher time. So I think this was very enlightening for me, kind of cathartic to read about. One of the good things I did read is they said that this type of ADHD set of symptoms does respond very well to cognitive behavioral therapy. So it's not like it's you experience this and like you're doomed. There are ways to kind of work through that. I personally found a lot of help listening to, I mean, obviously from therapy also, but there is a podcast called The Cure for Chronic Pain that was like pivotal for me with this specific. She talks a lot about anxiety, and one of the things that she focused, I mean, I obviously want people to listen to this podcast because it's so amazing, but one of the things she focuses on is when you experience something that's traumatic or intense or just a lot, your body is, if you're not dealing with that and working through it, your body is constantly in this fight or flight response to things. Mm-hmm. So your immediate, it's that same like off the cuff, like intense reaction to things, which when I was able to kind of go back and like work through some things, especially during COVID, having so much downtime, I was able to kind of work on some of that, unpack some of it, and I think it quelled some of that response, that really intense response. So that, for me, was impactful, listening to that podcast. But it's,
yeah, I've listened to a couple episodes of that, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I frequently listen to podcasts while at work, and that's not one that I can listen to while I'm at work.
Oh, yeah,
I
no.
to be alone.
I walk when I listen to that podcast.
Yeah.
But that's, yeah, it's a good one. She's really great. Shout out to Nicole Sachs, because what a great podcast that is, and the work that she does. So that's kind of my coverage of emotional dysregulation and moodiness and anger, and don't come at me. Also, yes, I'm sorry if we have had intense reactions. I am aware and I'm working on it. Don't at me. Also, if you're a neurologist, I did my best.
Your changes in volume there were so extreme.
I'll never get the hang of it. I can keep my distance there, but man, the volume, I just can't help it.
Are you where you're supposed to be distance-wise?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I can't tell from here.
Yeah. I had to use a new measure. Because the pen wasn't going to work.
Bummer. Yeah, the emotional dysregulation was crazy. And I was thinking of something, actually walking into work today. Because, like, and I know that we'll talk about food in a later episode and ADHD, but I was just, like, thinking about, like, where I was 5 years ago. Or 6 years ago, even. And, you know, where I am now physically. And then I was, like, thinking about it, and I was like, well, I'm about 100 pounds heavier, but I was like, if you average that out, that's, like, 15 to 20 pounds a year. Right. Which I was like, that's not actually super
extreme.
Unreasonable.
No.
And I was like, going the other direction, that's also not unreasonable. I could, like, set that as a totally normal goal. But it's, like, those little flashes of moments where I'm like, oh, okay, I can process this differently.
Yes.
Than how I have been, which has been, like, oh, you're gross, and that's just how you're going to be.
Yes, you know what? That's true. Like, I do find myself, I'll start to go down that path where it just gets real ugly, like, real quick. And I've gotten better with age at, okay.
And being aware of this diagnosis has very much helped me. Yeah. In the past, 4 months.
Honestly, life-changing. I've really changed my whole life, and I'm cured. So, sucks to be you, I guess.
But yeah, and I think that the negative self-talk, though, is probably kind of how, at least but I think both of us, coped with the emotional dysregulation.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Like, I just figured out how to internalize it. Like, I would, I'm very observant and very much inclined to watch what's happening. As much of a class clown as I was in grade school, I am, there's like always a second conversation happening inside my head. Like those freaking videos we saw.
I don't know if you guys have seen any of these. I'm sure you have, floating around different platforms. And they're showing somebody who's got ADHD, and they're doing an example of the soundtrack playing in their head of thoughts, and they're like layered over one another.
Yes.
And I was like shook when I saw it.
The first time I saw it, I was like, oh my God, that is exactly it. There's always like the words that I'm saying now, and then there's like this B-roll behind the scenes of like, oh yeah, and then this is what you can say next. And it's almost like that poor planning thing. So, like, my workaround is that I'm just constantly thinking out the next thing that I'm going to say or what I'm going to say in response to XYZ because, thank you, anxiety, I've thought through every possible option.
Thought through it, planned every alternative, then beat myself up for thinking about it, then beat myself up for making all the alternatives, then plan for other alternatives. Yeah. And it's just a nice little loop that you go on with everything forever. Right.
Which is usually why my nutritionist is like, how stressed have you been lately?
How has your stress level been?
Your cortisol levels are going to remain high.
Yes. Can you actually
figure out? Because
we'll definitely cover more of that in the food episode, but can you mention that? Because that has come up for me recently and I had to remind myself of it.
Yeah, so I started seeing a nutritionist about 9 or 10 months ago. And really because, I wanted to lose weight, but I also just wanted to have a better relationship with food because I feel like I go through, and we will discuss this more in detail on our food episode, our ADHD and food episode, but I go through these phases where I I can have overnight oats every day for breakfast. I can have the same lunch every day for breakfast. I have the same dinner. Are you okay? Garrett just took the biggest sip of her drink and got like a mouthful of chopped mint.
So it was actually a small drink, but a piece of mint is like fully in my throat, and I thought I was gonna like make a really loud gagging noise for a second.
She was trying so hard to be quiet with like her hand halfway down her throat.
I was like, if I can just really silently finger sweep this chunk of mint out of my throat.
I just finger my mouth.
It'll be fine.
She'll never know.
She'll never know. She won't see it sitting directly across from me. So I'm sorry. Continue with what you were saying. Seeing the nutritionist. And, so anyway, a few months ago, when I had first gotten my diagnosis, she and I were talking about, because I was going to go on medication. So she was talking about how most medications for ADHD are appetite suppressants. And so we were talking about how, like, it actually worked out that I started seeing her when I did so that I could just identify what hunger feels like, because I had done Weight Watchers for so long and all this other stuff. And so, but I had, like, this whole system. I had overnight oats. I had, like, whatever. It was all set. And then one day I was like, I would rather lick the sidewalk outside of our office building than eat overnight oats right now. Like, I will just starve. Yeah.
I don't, like, there's not a single thing about this that is appealing to me.
I either have to start a riot or eat these overnight oats.
Yeah, and riot is the only choice, with fire and pitchforks.
Yeah.
And so, but, so I had mentioned, so I was going through this transitional period. I also had to change my birth control at one point, and so I had said to her, my nutritionist, I was like, yeah, I've been, like, kind of stressed out lately. I'm changing these medications, so I'm trying not to be too hard on myself. But, and I don't remember what it was that was really stressing me out. But, because we were at the point where I was, like, now trying to, like, actively lose weight. And she was like, okay, well, if you're stressed out, though, like, you're not going to lose weight because stress increases your cortisol hormone, which automatically tells your body to hold on to water. So you will not show that you're losing weight if you step on the scale because your cortisol levels are increased.
And now's when we have, like, that bomb drop noise.
I couldn't believe it.
Because my mind was blown. And that happened to me, like, a week ago. I was feeling a little stressed out, a little run down, overwhelmed. And my weight was up. I was up, like, 5 pounds randomly for no reason. And I was, like, real mad about it. And then I was like, you know what? I've been stressed. It means my cortisol levels are high, which means I'm retaining water. And that's why I feel puffy. Specifically felt puffy.
And that's the thing that since she said that, I've been able to kind of, like, talk myself off the ledge of that negative self-talk.
Yes.
A lot, because...
Me too.
And it comes back to that question of, like, am I reacting normally to this situation?
Right.
So, at least when it comes to food, am I stopping eating when I'm full? Mm-hmm. And am I only eating when I'm hungry? Mm-hmm. If the answer to both of those questions is yes, then the rest of the question is irrelevant. The rest, anything else doesn't matter, and the scale doesn't matter to that point.
Right.
If, like, you're gonna fluctuate.
Right.
Just like your emotions fluctuate.
Just like my emotional dysregulation.
Right. So, like, it is just one of those things, but in researching ADHD in general, there's been so many of those moments where it's like the cortisol thing, where it's been, like, so eye-opening. So, yeah, it was just, it takes so much practice to not have emotional outbursts one way or the other.
It really does. And going through that process of, I'm at the point now where I think I've gone the other way. And now I'm concerned, like, am I not advocating for myself when I should? Because am I practically gaslighting myself, thinking that I'm overreacting to everything, when in reality sometimes I'm probably underreacting, but I'll figure it out.
Yeah, totally. And I think that there's something to be said for, which is, I mean, for sure my mantra of, well...
I'm filled with knives, so good luck.
I'm filled with knives. I'm doing the best I can. I'm very accepting of my own faults, which is probably a giant fault in and of itself.
I also played myself, and not only have I been attacked...
Turns out I'm the problem. I gotta stop giving myself permission to be an asshole.
I can't accept that. That can't possibly be the answer to this riddle. It can't be me. Am I the drama? Yes. No. I couldn't possibly be.
I'm not the drama. No.
Right? Am I? Right?
I'm cherubic.
Only.
Yeah.
That's just, I'm an angel.
That's why my cheeks are so red. It's not because it's 9,000 degrees outside.
Oh.
Or I spent too much time in the sun.
Yeah. Couldn't be either of those.
It's definitely not the sun thing, because only one of the people in my relationship does that.
I wear sunblock.
And hats. The right way.
Forward. So, to end this episode on a good note, we've decided we're going to start including some good news in these. Even though my personal specialty is a doom spiral, we're going to try some good news today. So
I did have to talk you off that doom spiral ledge a lot during COVID-1.
Oh, yeah. COVID, I was almost a professional. I'm actually going to say I was a professional. I was a professional at doom looping. It was a extremely high anxiety period. Paired with a hardy case of seasonal affective disorder.
Yeah. I would say at least twice a week I had to tell you to stop looking at the news.
Yep. And the crazy part is I was already avoiding the news. So the couple times I checked in was too much. Yep.
Yeah.
It was too much.
You also have news notifications on your phone.
Yep. I had them turned off for ages, but when I replaced my phone, everything turned back on. So now I have to go through and weed through what I want and don't want again. But yeah, turn off your push notifications and take news breaks. Speaking from experience, which we will cover more in the anxiety episode. So to end today on a good note, I follow Good Co on Instagram, and that is at Good Co. A few days ago, they posted, after nearly going extinct in the region, as many as 150 fin whales were just seen feeding off the coast of Antarctica. It says the incredible success story is credited to a 1982 decision by the International Whaling Commission to ban the practice of commercial whaling, because they were on the brink of extinction.
What kind of whale was that?
A fin whale. They're the second largest whales on the planet.
Really? Wow.
Yep. And when whaling...
Are they the ones with the little fins? I think they are. They have itty-bitty dorsal fins.
Don't know.
Little dingle-dangles.
I mean, from this perspective, they look like a giant orca.
Oh, okay.
But it's hard to tell. I don't know if I see white. So just proof that, conservation and environmental regulations work.
Yeah, they have a little dingle-dangle.
A little dingle-dangle.
It's I think it's a baleen whale. So it's like a humpback whale.
What do they sound like, Katie? Can you do a whale sound for us? Gets me every time.
You're welcome.
I don't know if listeners would believe if I said that. That's not the first time I've heard Katie's whale sounds. In fact, I hear them on a regular basis.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Yep. Yeah, she's...
Just black out when I wail for you, I guess.
I do whale sounds and I black out.
It is what it is. They kind of look like a really big version of a humpback whale, in my opinion. Okay. But they're like dark gray rather than black, like a humpback whale is.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, they have 50 to 100 throat grooves.
No.
That extend to the navel, which would only be necessary if they were eating krill. So.
No, thank you.
Because orcas do not have that, although technically orcas are porpoises.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, and they just eat straight up meats.
Yes.
They're not messing around with sea bits.
I did see something about 2 orcas who are off the coast of South Africa that were like ripping great white sharks apart.
There are some wild predators out there.
Yeah, if you've ever, listener, seen the movie, I'm not going to ask Garrett this question, but if you've ever seen the movie Shark Tale.
That's a maybe. I maybe have seen it.
It's animated.
Did it come out around, like, Finding Nemo?
Yes.
Like, it was riding the wave
Will
of Finding
Smith
Nemo.
voices the main guy.
I think I might have seen that. Was he a fish?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I think I saw that.
He's like a blue and yellow fish.
Yeah, I think
He works at a whale wash.
So, my head immediately was, like, blue and yellow. And I thought of the fish from The Little Mermaid, and I was like, nope.
No, not flounder.
Not flounder. I was so confident, too. I was like, oh, yeah, I know who that is. Nope, no, you don't. That's not it. But yes, I remember.
I think his name is Oscar in the movie.
Okay.
But, yeah, so there's the sharks, of course, that are the mafia bosses.
Okay.
And
logically,
they have a, like, meeting of the families sort of thing like they do in The Godfather.
Yep.
And there's, like, 2 orcas.
And they're like, you shouldn't even be here.
No, they were there, but they were like, so there was a shark voiced by Jack Black who was vegetarian.
Okay.
So he was dressed as in disguise as a dolphin. So he had like tape around his snout to make it more narrow, like a dolphin's would be. Good. And so he was also at this meeting because they thought the fish, Will Smith's character, was the shark slayer. So they were like, oh, we have to negotiate with this guy so he stops killing us. And so, anyway, this shark dressed as a dolphin is the shark slayer's bodyguard. Mm-hmm. And one of the orcas says to the other orca, my cousin Donnie got whacked by one of them. Because of the dolphin. Because dolphins fight back against orcas and great white sharks.
She's so pleased with herself right now.
You know what?
How'd you like that synopsis?
If you guys follow our Instagram page, I run it. But Garrett sent me a Instagram or a American Girl doll meme of one American Girl doll giving a fun fact about outer space.
Yep.
And the other American Girl doll saying, why the fuck would I know that?
Yep.
And she sent that to me and said, it's you. And I was like, ha ha ha. Wait, which one?
And I sent it to her and I went, it's you. And then I went, ha ha, wait, which one? With simultaneous separate reactions. They were exactly the same.
Yeah.
And then we both agreed, she's both.
Yeah. I do love a good, real weird fact about outer space or the ocean. Fuck. I love the ocean. You want to know
what my thought was today, but I was driving, so I couldn't look it up. So I'm going to look this up and clarify next episode because why not? I want to know how cement mixers work because I'm fucking fascinated that this is a truck driving down a highway and spinning cement at the same time. And I want to know what engineer designed that because, man, that's a cool thing.
I bet it's probably attached to the axle that the wheels use to move the truck. The end.
Well, my work here is done. Hope you liked it.
Or it's a totally separate motor.
Solved it. That's how they work.
The construction stands that we have listening to this podcast are going to screech and email us before
ultimately,
our next episode comes out.
No marine biologists, no neurologists, no cement mixer layers, drivers.
Construction workers?
Sure. And no stonemasons. We did that in the Patreon. If you were subscribed to our Patreon, you would hear a story where we did briefly mention stonemasons.
Yes, we did talk about stonemasons, not Freemasons, which I would love to do a deep dive on, actually.
That's a crazy one. Yeah.
But yeah, tune into our Patreon. We can explain the cement mixer in Patreon if we want to.
I guess.
But yeah.
Either way, you guys are going to hear way more about cement mixers than you want to know.
Yeah, you can subscribe to our Patreon for $5 a month. We have extra sideshow content.
You know what? Just leave it at sideshow. It is a sideshow. It is random. It's crazy. You're getting a lot. But, you know.
You are. But I think it's a good time. And, I mean, I have fun running it.
I have a blast. Katie even writes you lovely, delightful horoscopes.
Oh, yeah. You get a monthly horoscope if you're on our Patreon. They're super legit and not at all accurate. Fully fictional.
Not made up at all. Only scientifically accurate.
Definitely not based on the traits of people I personally know who are those star signs.
Yep. Every now and then I read them and I'm like, oh, that one's directed to me. That was about me.
Maybe I'll have you start writing the Sagittarius ones.
Well, this month.
So it's not biased.
You're going to be a real a-hole. I don't know why I said a-hole. Asshole.
Suddenly we're censored. Now we're a family podcast.
Family podcast. Yikes. Not if you got this far.
Probably not. I mean, then again, whatever. I feel like kids these days.
You know what? Somehow she did her Sean Connery voice just now.
But I was trying to be the Grinch.
So her Grinch voice and Sean Connery voice are the same. There's another one, too, that you do that's the same voice, and I haven't remembered what it is yet, but same umbrella.
Yeah. I don't have... I
Goldmember is the same accent. Okay, so Goldmember, the Grinch, and Sean Connery.
I watched it over the weekend. It was so good. It was so stupid.
God.
Pipe and a crepe? It's a different voice. The little one can't take a hint. Oh, it's Nadia. That's what it is.
That was great.
It's dead.
That was I laughed a lot today. Now it makes me sleepy when I laugh.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for tuning in. We both fall asleep, completely unconscious.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in for another edition of The Bar is Ankle High. Thank you for all the support. We can't wait for you to hear these episodes.
Oh, and happy anniversary to PK, because technically, according to him, this comes out on our actual anniversary and not the one that is real.
He's wrong, but it's okay.
It's the anniversary of when he officially asked me to be his girlfriend.
Yeah, no one uses that date.
No.
No one uses that date.
Whatever. I better get 2 presents, that's all I know.
No, that's a good point.
But yeah, let's throw that in at the end. Just...
Do you remember that one Lord of the Rings movie where it just, like, you kept thinking it was the end of the movie, but then I remember one of them, there was, like, 6 times we thought it was the end of the movie, so people were literally, like, clapping, like, that was great, and then, okay, it's still going. And then, like, it would wrap up, we're like, oh, okay, wow, nope, that's not it either.
That's how I feel when I watch Star Wars, and I like Star Wars, but fuck those movies.
Yeah. God. That's this episode. It's like a Lord of the Rings movie.
Look, we already did the disorganization.
But episode. Fewer orcs.
Just by like 2 or 3 less.
Just a couple less. Yeah. But otherwise,
we're not the Uruk-hai, so we got that going for us.
Could be worse. It could be worse. Well, thank you for tuning in, anyway.
Yeah.
And we will see you next week.
Yeah!
Bye!
Bye! Thanks for tuning in. We'll be here next Thursday with a brand new episode to delight your brain juices. Until then, the best way to support us is to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and like and subscribe wherever you listen. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at The Bar is Ankle High. And if you want to help us grow the podcast even more, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/thebarIsAnkleHigh. Patreons get exclusive Patreon-only episodes, monthly horoscopes written by yours truly, and access to our secret members-only Facebook group, as well as added to our close friends list on Instagram. We have a lot of fun over there, and we would love for you to join us. Until next week, remember to be kind to yourself because the bar is ankle high.